Hi, my name is Gabby, and I'm part of BookTrib's editorial team. And today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Stacey Cohen-Maitre, who is a pediatric neuropsychologist and the author of Asher and Stacey's Magnificent Road Trip, which is a current finalist in the ScreenCraft book competition in Hollywood. This book encompasses their unique challenges and also delves into the deeper emotional and spiritual realms. So welcome, Stacey.
Thank you, Gabby. I just want to tell you a little bit about the premise of my book. My husband and my other 3 children were going to go on an adventure to see family in Louisiana and have loads of fun. But because Asher has cerebral palsy and cortical visual impairment, such a trip would be just impossible. He's so big, they take away your wheelchair, and then God forbid he had to use the bathroom. That would be almost impossible. So I decided, we're going to go on our own grand adventure. So we decided to take a road trip around Southern California, but it wasn't your typical road trip. It unveils itself in the book why we're doing a specific road trip. But the truth of the matter is, I just wanted that time with him, and I wanted to treat him just as special as my other children. My book is not just about how unique and interesting a person like Asher is, who is non-ambulatory, non-verbal, and visually impaired. He's so much more than those diagnoses. And this book is so much more than about a person with disabilities and a mother who loves him. There are so many things that people need to know and people can learn. There are 4 main themes that I felt that I captured in this book. As I said before, how unique and interesting Asher is as a human being, how other people don't really know how to engage us when we're out there in the community. There's staring and smiling, but pity in their eyes. There's inappropriate statements and questions, and even telling me while we're eating lunch in the food court their own harrowing stories. And Asher and I are looking at each other like, this is not going to be a light day. And then there's our physical, emotional, and spiritual journey together. It's all encapsulated in this journey and on this road trip. And of course, the physical element is me, handling him, but all by myself, and me emotionally reprocessing her whole life together. And then there's the spiritual side, and I'm not going to divulge it. That's a big part of my book. Mm-hmm. And you'll see how I want to see him on the other side. And then it's just about unconditional love. It is an unconditional love story. And I'm going to go through each of these themes more specifically now. Asher is so unique because even though he was born prematurely, experienced hypoxia and ischemia secondary to poor lung development, he ended up with a diagnosis of periventricular leukomalacia. And that means there are gaps in the white matter of your brain, and the white matter of your brain is like a highway that connects to all different parts of your brain. And so the most interesting thing about that is that his receptive language area, a person knowing about the brain would say Wernicke's area, that area is pretty intact. So if you give Asher an experience, or you descriptively tell him about it, or even watches a documentary, he gets it. And you could ask him a million questions and he'll give you really good answers. The thing that's also quite unique about him is he's a little bit like mommy. Okay, so he wakes up in the middle of the night all the time. I need to change, put the blanket over his shoulder, move the pillow, turn the TV on and off and on and off and on and off. But one time he asked me to come to his room, is what he says. And I go to his room and he points to not point with his hand, but reaches towards the closet door, and it's 2 inches ajar. And I'm like, do you want me to close it? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, you can see that? Because he's visually impaired too, on top of it. He sees color and motion and makes sense of that, but not my face. So I went back to sleep. And of course, he did it several more times. So before going to bed, I always made sure the closet door was shut. One day, he was in his lounge chair in our family room, and he's reaching out to the coffee table towards the centerpiece. And he's going, ah. So my husband goes, do you want me to move the centerpiece into the center? And he's like, ah. So he does it. And then my husband walks in the kitchen. He goes, it's you, he's you. He says it twice, like I wouldn't get it the first time. And so the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, even with brain damage. Okay. Things have backfired. We used to do equestrian therapy when he was lighter, and he'd have two people on each side of him leading the horse and one in the front leading the horse. Actually, the two on the side were keeping him safe. And he kept on leaning over to this petite brunette woman who was not saying anything to him, and he kept on trying to kiss her. And I went, hey, Ash, I'm over here. And he like kind of oriented, and he certainly sat up straight and stopped being amorous with that volunteer. So those are interesting things about Asher. Another time is he was very upset. We were about to leave somewhere, and he's carrying on, and I'm like, what's wrong? And I used like partner assisted scanning because it's fast, basically because he can't see well. I offer options. I put my hand out, and he touches it when he hears the option he wants. So I didn't come up with the options he wanted. So I took out his computerized speech device called the Dynavox, and he uses it through the auditory scanning methodology where he doesn't visually see an icon and press a button. It goes off auditorily for him, and he presses a button when he hears what it is that he wants. And he also goes through pages and pages to get to the option that he wants. So that day, he went through his home page, he went through another page, and hit the button that said, my seatbelt is too tight. So I took the wheelchair tray off, and I looked down, and there was no seatbelt on. So there wasn't an icon that said, your stupid mother forgot to put on your seatbelt. So please, let's not leave right now. So that's what's so great about Asher. He's like so on it. And people who look at him think, oh, he must be so impaired cognitively, but he's there. He's a whole person. And I see him as a whole person. Now, when we go out in public and on this road trip, my growth really happened because people gave me strange looks. They averted gaze. They said, what's wrong with him? Right in front of him. And I told you, people just share their stories at the wrong time. And I hate this. We're waiting for the elevator, and people will come out, and we try to get in. We can't. The elevators, doors, boom. And so I'm like now the Mother Teresa of the elevators, because when I get it out of an elevator, I hold it. I don't care if you're in a wheelchair or not. I'm going to make sure you get on. So, there's a lot of those things, but along the way, we met some very loving, caring individuals like waiters and concierge people and bakery owner and, like just really inspiring people that wanted to get to know him. And I was his conduit. And the other part I wanted to talk about was the physical strain of it. My husband said, please don't do this. What if you're in a handicapped bathroom? You fall with him because you're all alone, the door's locked, and you crack your head open. So I said, what, you want me to do it at home in the living room instead? I mean, it's like, I'm not going to deprive him of a grand adventure like his siblings. And so I just decided to just go forth. But I did, as I drive on the freeway, and my book talks, my book exposes my thoughts. I am thinking, am I crazy? And then I look in the rear view mirror and I see Asher dancing like a supernatural being, and I know I'm doing the right thing. The emotional part was that I did reprocess our whole history together on this trip. The good, the bad, the challenging, the incredible moments that other parents probably don't know about. And I don't know about theirs except through my other children. And like I said, there's a spiritual journey too, through dreams, fugue states. Yes, I drive in a fugue state sometimes, and just daydreams and envisioning us as beings that are not physical, where there's no cerebral palsy, there's no visual impairment, there's no bipolar or autism or cancer or just suffering. You're not suffering anymore, and you could just be free and expand the universe together, really. You know, I don't blame him if he'd want to come back and try it again without a disability or multiple disabilities, but I'd like to stay engaged and intertwined with him forever. The last theme that I'm discussing is our unconditional love. It is an unconditional love story. We have this nonverbal back and forth banter that I don't have with my other kids because they can all talk. His sounds, his beautiful smile, his beautiful eyes, those brown eyes. And I call him a variety of silly nicknames like Baji. I call him Jing Jong Jing sometimes. I call him Bob. And I actually one day looked them all up, and they're all meaning the same thing, like shining light. And his own name means blessed. And, you know, he is a blessed soul. And I'm so honored to be his mom. And I've learned so many lessons. Sometimes I feel like he's given more to me than I've given to him. Of course, I've learned compassion. I think I always try to go about being with Asher by being on the other side, imagining what it's like to be him. And I sometimes, you know, I do believe in past lives. I do. And sometimes I think maybe I was the handicapped one in the last life and he was my father. It may give me consolation to think that way, but I honestly think like that. And the empathy, you know, for other people who struggle, not just with disabilities, which is my specialty, but anyone who suffers. I have so much compassion for, because the struggle is hard and we all do. And look at this past year with coronavirus, so much loss, so much suffering. It's been really challenging. And patience, of course, I need so much patience, because it may take Asher 40 minutes to do a toileting routine, or it may take a minute or two to get his thoughts together on the Dynavox, or even to say, yeah. It sometimes comes out like 30 seconds later. And sometimes he even answers me by lifting the pinky a little bit, like to say yes. And I'm like, Ash, please don't get into that, because no one's going to see your pinky move. You know, just try to say yes, because one day I'm not here and no one's going to notice your little pinky saying yes. And then the silver lining that's underneath suffering, if you don't die. I mean, really, suffering is bad sometimes, and sometimes the outcome isn't good. But sometimes there's something for all of us to learn by suffering. And this is not the only opportunity that God has given me to suffer. You know, I'm overcoming leukemia right now. And I have a son with high functioning autism who's doing very well, actually. And other things in my life that have been a lot about suffering. But I always choose to join in some way. Like, I wasn't a psychologist before I had Asher. I became a psychologist after Asher, and a neuropsychologist after my other son. And the book is really just sharing that more positive look at suffering, that there's so much to gain. You can evolve and become the person you've always wanted to be, and not be other things that you're not meant to be. And I really think that my life experience with Asher has done that for me. I think that's, oh yeah, I want to go back and just give you a little bit of a glimpse of some of the funnier, but I guess during the experiences, it didn't seem funny, but writing about it, I felt like I was I Love Lucy. You know, I was Lucille Ball in this physical slapstick kind of way with Asher, and I could see it in a movie, because if you get some actors that really has good comedy skills, it could be hilarious. Mostly like getting him onto the hotel bed. Now, I didn't think about that ahead of time. Okay. I really didn't think about it, but I did hear Asher's physical therapist in the back of my mind. She's a Russian woman. Stacey, please call for help if you need help, please. So anyway, here I am trying to be a great mother. The first day of our trip, it was really hot. He was sweaty. I brought out his shower chair, believe it or not, and I'm getting him in the shower, right? And he's already perturbed. He's like, I had a big day. I just want to go to bed, like most people, right? I'll skip the shower. But no, I want him to look good and feel good and smell good. So we're in the shower in his chair, and he's already perturbed. And I'm all confused because there's like this conditioner and the shampoo, and I'm all confused. Which one is which? Like conditioning shampoo, shampooing conditioner. I'm like, what? And I'm like, I even have a Ph.D. I can't even figure this out. They didn't have a course in this, okay? So he's so mad. I put the wrong one in. Okay, we finally get out of the shower. He's like, get me into bed. Just getting him in the shower chair was hard, let me just tell you, because the wheelchair is much easier. There's locks and it's firm, and I have a whole routine. But I couldn't get him onto the bed. So I called the concierge, and I'm like, please send someone up right away. I need help. Okay, yes, Miss Cohen. So like at 5 minutes past, no one comes up. I'm like, oh. And he's carrying on, and I'm counting elevators because elevators are his passion. And I'm like, 1 elevator, 2. But when I get up to 20, he like loses it again. So I keep on counting elevators up to 20. And then finally, after the third call, the concierge knocks on the door. I run to get it so he doesn't fly out of the chair. And he takes one look at Asher, and he's like, oh. And so we get him on the bed. And as he's doing it, he says, he's a big boy. And so I cuddle Asher up. And that was our Lucille Ball kind of evening. So that's about kind of what I wanted to tell you about.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
I love just hearing from you and hearing you speak about this whole experience, because truly, like, the book was one of my favorites I've read in a very long time.
I appreciate it.
And just kind of to ask you, do you believe that you were the same person at the end of this trip that you set out on the road trip as?
Well, I mean, I have been evolving along the way, but I think for me, the arc was not being angry at people for not knowing what our experience is like. I mean, I used to get kind of fed up, and but then I had this one experience at a restaurant that was really helped me understand. I was having brunch with Asher at the Shishi restaurant at the hotel, and this lady dressed in designer wear, looked stunning, like Jane Fonda perhaps, was eating with her partner and or man, and this waitress at the same time was noticed I like croissants. Asher has elevator obsessions. I have croissant obsessions, so that's in the book, and it's funny. But she's like, oh, you got to try the jam. It's homemade. Please try it. So I'm slathering it on my croissant, even though I'm on the Weight Watchers diet, or then I changed it to the Weight Watchers lifestyle. And then I said, what the heck, I'm on vacation. So it just changed rapidly. So it was delicious. So she's like, just take some home with you. So I'm taking like every single jar of jam in a basket into my purse. And then I catch that lady's eyes looking me over like, are you a criminal? Like, are you supposed to be here? And I looked down like a little ashamed, and I looked back up, and I gave her just the sweetest smile. I don't know if some spirits said, just give her a smile. And I did, and she smiled back even more sweetly. So when it came to pay for my check, the waitress said, oh, this couple that wanted to remain anonymous paid for your whole meal. And I said, oh, was it a person over there? And she just smiled, and I knew it was that lady. And I just realized the icebreaker is me smiling, not waiting for other people to smile at us with their eyes, although it's something you should probably know in the future if you do want to connect. But I just smile to let them know it's okay. We're okay. So
Yeah.
my involvement was in that regard, and just allowing myself to imagine our life beyond this life.
Mhm.
And I do. So anyway.
Yes. And obviously, people in similar situations with challenges like Asher will definitely relate to this book and take comfort in learning from it. And when you talk about reaching a wider audience, where does that, like, what is the most important aspect of that to you?
Well, I think this is a book for everyone. Like I said, it's about unconditional love and what that looks like. It's about patience, because we all need patience. We all need acceptance. We all have problems. We all have differences. Wouldn't it be a great world if we all accepted individual differences? Not just about skin tone, but yes, about skin tone, about religion, about maybe not looking like everyone else or acting like everyone else. Let's have some compassion. I hear all the time about people with children with autism and they have their temper tantrums, and other people are just so intolerant. Well, they don't know what it's like to have a kid with autism that's young and not really maybe had some behavior therapy yet, or maybe that's just their difficulties in regulation. But there are plenty of people that are going through cancer and other things that are very hard. And we need to have acceptance for that and just a little more understanding, and not bully and not think less of them, especially if we don't know them. Also, just putting yourself in someone else's shoes is always a good practice. It's a very advanced thing to do with your brain. It's up in that frontal lobe on the right side. And it's important to do that. That increases your understanding, because you're trying to understand what it's like to be in those shoes. And also the silver lining of suffering. I'm not saying you should all suffer. I don't like when people suffer. It bothers me when all my kids are going through something. And I've watched them suffer throughout this year because they haven't been able to, they've been quarantined pretty much. But that sometimes I tell parents to just join in, because if you fight it, you're fighting something that you're fighting loving your child. You're fighting loving another person. You're not really enjoying them or accepting them. So I always feel it's time to join in. There was a famous Sesame Street writer who talked about having a child she had one with Down syndrome, and she thought she was going to go to Italy with her child. That's as a metaphor. But she realized she couldn't go to Italy now. She had to go to, let's say, another beautiful place. And she realized that it had so much to offer. And for me, I initially hated that story because I'm like, I did lose a lot and my life was forever changed. But once I got over what I thought I lost, and once I grew up a little bit in my own brain, which was just didn't take long, I realized that the journey that I'm on with Asher is magnificent. And that's why I named it Asher and Stacey's Magnificent Road Trip. It is truly a magnificent road trip because it's based on a magnificent relationship and a magnificent life journey.
And just before we wrap up, do you have any parting thoughts or any final messages that you really want to convey before we hop off?
I'd love for you to read my book. It would make me so happy. And just share it with people that you care about that would really get something out of it. I did an author's evening, and one parent said, I used to carry around this other book, but now I'm going to carry around your book. And I'm like, wow, that really moved me that she would carry my book around with her like a, I don't know, a good luck charm. So yeah, I think I shared all the lessons I've learned in a nutshell, although there are so many more. And I hope that you can see that this book really meant a lot to me. And hopefully because of the context we're in with coronavirus, it will mean a lot more to a lot of people.
Yes. If you haven't had a chance to pick up this book, I would 155 million % recommend it. I loved it personally. Thank you so much, Stacey, for sitting down with us. We are so lucky to have you, and Asher is so lucky to have you. So thank you.
Thank you, Gabby, and thank you, BookTrib.